658. That's the phone number. Just give it. All right. Well, let us ask you for his favor on this time. Father, we give you thanks and praise for the opportunity to be here once again to fellowship in your presence with brothers and sisters on this evening. Father, as always, we come to seek you, to seek your truth. Yahuah. And so even as we come on this evening, we ask Yahuah that you would help us to decrease and that you would increase in us, Father. Yahuah, that you would teach us, that you would lead us, that you would guide us in your word according to your truth. What we seek, Yahuah, is your truth, the whole truth, and absolutely nothing but the truth. We have inherited many great lies, and Father, you even tell us in your word that in our awakening that we would awaken in confusion. We live in the house of confusion, and so we need clarity. And for that, we seek you. So we barak your great name. We say Todah Yahuah for making it possible for us all to be here. We thank you for keeping us through this day and through the past week, and for now bringing us into yet another week. We thank you for that, Father. And so may you favor us on this evening. May you barak this time. And may you lead us continually in your word. Our dependence is truly on you. And so favor us, we pray, in Yahusha's name. Aman. Hallelujah. Praises to Yahuah. All right. Well, once again, we give Yahuah praise. Praise Yah. I like my wife's nick there, always smiling. Praise Yah. Once again, to Yahuah be all praise on this team. And it is indeed a baraka to be here. It's been certainly been a busy day, busy up to the last minute for me here. And so it was kind of like a dash to the finish line, trying to make sure that I get the room open on time. And so I'm thankful that Yahuah see fit to allow it, and that Yahuah see fit to bring you here on this evening, family. And so again, it's truly a delight to see each and every one of you, and do look forward to our discussion on this evening. Now, with all that said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go ahead and uh, yeah, that is my cute, beautiful wife. Yeah, so with that said, I'd like to go ahead and open up the floor. Wanna I'm looking for a volunteer to break the ice here on this evening, and so, you know, even if there's a little bit of fear, just kind of pull your stomach in, breathe deep, and just blurt it out. So um, the floor is open. The floor is open, family, and I need you to rescue me. Okay, so to the I see flags up. Wonderful. By the way, Akut Al Yashba. And who should I go with first? Akut Joan. We have not had the opportunity of hearing Akut Joan's voice, and we've been asking to hear her voice, and I see her flag. So um, I'd say we start with Akut Joan, right? Okay. All right. We start with Akut Joan. We'll go to Akut Al Yashaba, and then we'll go to Akut Valerie. All right. Praise Yah. Akut Joan, please go ahead, Akut. You have our undivided attention. Akut Araya, she's not quite in yet, so she doesn't hear me. Shalom to you, Akut Yaria. It is wonderful to see you, Akut. Okay. I'm gonna No, she's not speaking yet. I think you'll be able to hear through this. I'm gonna unmute the mic for Akut Joan. Akut, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute your mic, okay? Here we go.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. Okay.
Shalom,
Okay.
Mashpachah.
Shalom to you, Akut.
I know I never talk, but I'm here. Anyway, my question is Galatians chapter 4, verse, look like verse 24, where it says, this is allegorical. Because somebody came on my wall earlier and tagged me in a post that suggests that the story of Abraham and Sarah and Hagar were all made up because of the word allegorical that's in verse 24. And I just think it's Shaitan up to his old tricks trying to dispute the stories in the scriptures. So that's my question. I think did I explain it clear enough for everybody? Hello? Okay.
All
I'll
right.
release. Okay, you can release the mic.
Okay, great. Thank you. Um, I forgive me for the delay. I'm trying to make sure that I don't have feedback, and so while my wife is listening, I mute my mic so she can hear without you getting some feedback. So I want to apologize for the delay. There will be a bit of delay between whoever comes to the mic and me getting back responding. So I just know that, but we're hearing very well. All right. So, but I just wanted you to know that. If we could silence that phone for me, babe. Um, great. That's a great question, Akut. That's that that's a great question. And to answer the question, I'm gonna do a couple of things. We have several questions on the board, so I'm not gonna stay very long on it, but perhaps later I'll come back to it. But I'm gonna answer the question. But when I answer questions, I like to answer with the scriptures. I like to take the time to go through the scriptures because it's our best. That's the evidence that we depend on, right? And so if I answer without the scriptures, one can easily say that, well, he's just giving his opinion. So that's why I like to go to the scripture. So real quickly, I'm going to go to Galatians chapter 4, and I want to point out a few things as we go to Galatians chapter 4. But first, let me try to get to it here, and I'm going to put it on the screen, family, so everyone can see it. And while I'm pulling up Galatians, I want to make a point that the thing that we have to keep in mind when it comes to translation is that translation is just that. And all translation, there's not a pure translation that we have. So what I've found through studying is that all translation is corrupt. It has been touched by corrupt hands. And so, it's interesting as I say this. I The television was on, and we fell asleep with the television on, and I woke up to the television on. But when we went to sleep, it was on a channel where something different was on. When I woke up, the Catholics were on, and so it was a Catholic channel, but it just so happened that they had something else on there when I was watching earlier before going to sleep. When I woke up early in the morning, probably about 4 o'clock in the morning, the Catholics were on there, and they were showing all of their statues, all the statues, different statues in the Vatican, and they're telling you what the statues are, and they're telling you, family, on this program, they're telling you the statues, they're naming the statues, and they're telling you that is this statue is so and so from Greek mythology, and this is the quote unquote, this is the god of this, and this is the goddess of that, and they had one statue that Pope some Pope, whatever his name was, don't remember his name, but a popular Pope. This statue had no head, no hands. It was the statue of a woman, and she, of course, comes from Greek mythology, and she was the goddess of something. But even though the statue had no head and no hand, he saw fit, to make a mandate in the catechism to include it in their so-called faith. And so people actually pray to these statues. People in Christianity, in the Catholic Church, pray to these statues. Some of the people praying to these statues, some of them know, but some of them don't even realize that they're actually praying to um to 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 idols from that comes from Greek mythology. In that vein, I remember there was a guy at my job, um African, so-called African American, right? That's what they call us. And he likes to come in and he likes to push his Christianity on everybody. He's he's just fired up about his Christianity, and so he comes in and he always talking about Jesus, and he's just on fire for Jesus. And so uh, one year, last year it was, there was a Caucasian man there, and that worked there, and they got into a conversation, more like an argument, really, because the Caucasian man said something to him about Halloween, and he told the Caucasian man, I don't celebrate Halloween, that's demonic. So the Caucasian man said to him, Caucasian man being a Catholic, called himself Mike the Greek, said to him, uh, you you worship a lot of things that you don't know you worship, you know, and laughed about it, So this is a Catholic speaking to a Protestant, and he's telling the Protestant, our people, that you worship a lot of idolatry, more so than you realize you worship. And that the reason why he could say that is because he knows the history, right? This guy knows the history. He knows that Christianity, that's all Christianity really is, you see. But I woke up to that this morning, to where they're going through these idols, and they're uh yes, he's speaking about himself, and but he's proud of it. He had no issue with it. He was telling the guy that Halloween is his favorite holiday, you see. And he don't have an issue. He don't have an issue saying that I believe in Zeus or any of these other idols. He didn't have an issue with that. The Christian gentleman had an issue, though, when basically he was telling the Christian man that the things that you believe in the same things I believe in. And so if I worship these idols, you worship the same idols too. You just don't know it. You see, he's proud of it. And he's telling the other guy, the Protestant, that, black gentleman, he's telling him that you believe the same things I believe. And the black guy is telling him, no, we don't believe the same thing. But the fact of the matter is, the white guy was right, you see, because that's the thing. When we're in church, we know not what we worship. It's like when Shaul went up to Mars Hills, to our people, in that time, in Acts chapter 11 to chapter 17, you see. And this was Yashar'al there in the Isles of Greece, and they're up there and they're worshiping these idols. They're worshiping the idols of the Greeks, and they believe that they were worshiping Yahuah. But they also believe that Yahuah didn't do things all by himself, that there are many mighty ones accompanying Yahuah. And so Shaul said to them, I see here that you have many altars. And I also noticed that you have an altar to the unknown mighty one. Well, I am here to declare to you who he is. You see, and the scriptures tells us that so many of them believed, but others were comfortable with where they were and took up stones to stone him. They didn't want to be corrected. You see, and these were people of Yashar'al. Now, I say all that to say that the same people who esteem these things are the same people who give us the translations, and they twist the translations to fit their pagan way of life and their pagan belief. And so when we look at translation, we always have to keep in mind that There are a lot of things that we see in translation that doesn't even belong. It's all over the translations, from what they call the Old Testament to the New Testament. But especially when you get into the so-called New Testament, the corruption really gets deep. You see, so in the book of Galatians, they have truly messed with the writings of Shaul. They have truly messed with the writings of Shaul to make Shaul appear to be Torahless, lawless, or a disobedient one. Because you see, if you are against Torah, the scriptures describe you as disobedient. You see, if you're against the instructions of Yahuah, then you are disobedient. And so they do all they can to make Shaul look like he's against Torah. And so even in the book of Galatians, when they translate, they add, they subtract, and they twist to make things appear to be what it is. So even the word that is used there, akut, that you mentioned, and you won't find that word in every translation. I don't even remember the word that you mentioned. If you could write that word on there for me again, I'm going to put Galatians chapter 4 on the screen. But if you could write that word again for me, akut, I'd appreciate that. But even that word, that's not a word that you would find in the text, you see. Now, as concerning allegorical, tada, yep, that's it, right. So it's really not even a word that you would find in the text, because it's no um give me 1 second, let me put this on the screen. All right, so in um in Galatians, I wonder if, okay, I don't know if I could. Joan had raised their flag again, or that was from earlier. Let me dismiss it, and if you want to raise it again, you can go ahead and raise it again, I could, so I know. Now, so I'm gonna go down now to the verse. Let me see, where is that verse at here again? All right, yep, verse 24. Right? So you see, this this whole phrase, this is allegorical. For these are the two contracts, not covenants, but contracts. Now, all of this right here, I assure you that if you should get a hold of the text, this is something that probably you won't find in the text. It was added, you see. Um, perhaps added, you see. But at the same time, too, if it belongs in the text, if Shaul in fact did say this, then if you go back to what is being said in the scriptures, you have types, right? So Yahuah communicates his message in very diverse ways. So you have a lot of types in the scriptures. You could say types and antitypes, as some people would say. And so when you look in the scriptures, you see, for example, Masha. Masha was a type of Yahuah to the people. Uh, um, Yahusha was a type of Yahuah to Yashar'al. Yahusaf was prophetic of Yahusha was prophetic of what Yahuah would do on behalf of us, his people, and so on and so forth. So here, when Shaul speaks concerning the woman, I'm going to read the text here for a second. He says, "My little children, for whom I am again in birth pains until Mashiach is formed in you, even now I wish to be present with you now, and to change my voice, for I have doubts about you." To change my voice. It's not how you would find it. This is translated stuff, right? I don't know if Shahu would say to change my voice, for I have doubts about you. Say to me, you wish, excuse me, say to me, you wish to be under Torah. Do you not hear the Torah? For it has been written that Abraham had two sons, one by a female servant, the other by a free woman. But he who was of the female servant was born according to the flesh, and he of the free woman through promise. This is allegorical, for these are the two contracts, one indeed from Mount Sinai, which brings forth slavery, which is Agar, for this Agar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and corresponds to Yerushalayim, which now is and is in slavery with her children. All right, so the word that Shahul would use wouldn't be necessarily allegorical, but something perhaps that basically points to that the idea of this being prophetic or a foreshadow, so to speak, a representation, right, so to speak. So Yahuwah uses this as a representation, but simply because it's used as a representation of Yashar'al, this does not mean that the story of Hagar and Sarai or Sarah, Sharyah, or Sharyahu, it does not mean that the story never happened. The scriptures is clear that it happened. If you go to the book of uh, Yashar, you get further details. We'll see further details on that. We get more details from the book of Yashar than we get in, say, the book of Barashit. We see that Ashma'al and Hagar was not sent away until Ashmahal was about 13 years old, if I recall correctly. And the reason why they were sent away was because Ashma'al was jealous of his brother once the promised son did come. Ashmahal became jealous of Yatshak and sought to kill him, attempted to kill him according to the scriptures. And so, because of this, Sharia said to Abraham, "You need to send him away." And for that reason, he and his mother was sent away because he attempted to kill her son, and so that's what happened according to the scriptures. So while it is something that actually happened, it also can be an example, as many things can be used in the scriptures, and as many things are used in the scriptures as examples to us of Yahuwah's working within his people. We talked about, for example, we talked about the what do you call them, the parables, right? And now the parables, if we want to use the word allegorical, the parables are allegories, pointing to Yahuwah's relationship with Yashar'al. Now, with parables, some of those things did not necessarily happen. They were just used as examples, you see, to teach a lesson. But then there are things that actually happened that are still used as examples to Yashar'al. And so nothing is wasted with Yahuwah. And so these are events that happened from which we can learn a lot from. And that's the point that Shahul would be making. And so the fact that the translators use the word allegorical certainly does not mean that uh, the events and circumstances surrounding Sharia and Hagar, it doesn't mean that they never happened. They certainly did happen, and the book of Yashar provides even greater details, even more so than the book of Barashit does. So I'm sorry, Akud, for taking the long road there to answer that question, but it is my hope that answered satisfactorily, and perhaps at some time we can go to the book of Yashar to see more. By the way, I gotta say one more thing. Praise Yah, praise Yah. You're welcome, the coot. I gotta say one more thing. If you read the book of Galatians, the book of Galatians, it's a study that we had promised to get into and we never really got to it. When we read the book of Galatians, just like the book of Romans, when we read the writings of Shaul, we have to treat them for what they are. They are letters. The problem is that people jump in the middle of them and begin to read, and hence by doing so take them out of context. And so if you're reading the book of Galatians and you just jump right into chapter 4 and begin to read, it will seem as if Shaul is teaching against Torah. Okay, when in reality, if you start from the beginning of the book and read continuously through, okay, then you get what he is saying in context. You see, if you start in chapter 4, if you start in chapter 2, or if you start in chapter 3, or if you just jump all the way to chapter 5, it would be like walking into a room, opening up a door, walking into a room where two people are having a conversation. They've been talking long before you got there. You just walk into the midst of the conversation and you hear something said, and from what is being said, you might assume that, oh, they're talking about me, or oh, they're saying this and they're saying that. When really, if you were there from the beginning, you would understand that what they're saying has nothing to do with you, or even perhaps have nothing to do with the assumptions that you come up with after just walking in on the conversation. So context is important. So when we start in the middle of the book, or toward the end of the book, like the Christians always do, when we just jump to a verse or jump to a passage, it can sound like it's saying something and that it's not saying. And that's the case. That's always the case with people and the writings of Shaul. So they accuse Shaul of teaching against Torah. People in church said that Shaul teach against Torah, and they're fine with that. And people who are seeking to walk according to the way says that Shaul teach against Torah, and they're not okay with that. The problem is, the fact is that both of them are wrong, because Shaul does not teach against Torah. When we start at the beginning, when we take his letters and we begin to study them and read them contextually, we will see that Shaul is not speaking against Torah. What Shaul is speaking against is he's speaking against the burdens, the same burdens that Yahusha spoke of, that the religious folks seek to lay on the people. People seeking to make religion of the way. You see, Yahuah give us a way. We are people of the way. He give us a way of life. He gives us a lifestyle. He did not give us a religion. But always there have been people who tried to make a religion of the way. And so Shaul does not speak against Torah. He spoke against people who were teaching that you need to save yourself. And the way you do that, you must circumcise yourself in order that you may be saved, because Mashiach can't save you. You see, these were people, you see people today teaching against Mashiach. That didn't just begin. It was actually happening in Shaul's day. There were many people teaching against Mashiach. And if you teach against Mashiach, you're teaching against Yahuah, because Mashiach is Yahuah. And so they were teaching against Mashiach. They were saying that Yahusha can't deliver you. You need to deliver yourself. And the way you do that is through the cutting, is through concision or circumcision, whatever you see it represented as in translation. You see, and Shaul was teaching against that. He was teaching against man-made doctrine. You see, doctrines that have been where men take the scriptures out of context and misrepresent them. And so as we begin if we begin in chapter 4 of the book of Galatians, it's going to seem, or even in chapter 3, it's going to seem as if Shaul is teaching against Torah. And that is not what Shaul is doing. When we begin in chapter 1 and we follow it all the way through, we see exactly what he's teaching against. And he's absolutely right in his teaching. And so that's the problem. And then on top of that, on top of people taking stuff out of context, we also have to keep in mind that the translators, the Christian translators, misrepresent, put things in and take things out in order for it to sound the way they want it to sound. And so that's something else that we contend with also. And that's what a lot of people fail to see. Absolutely. And Shaitan is busy also. Absolutely, Akut. And so these are all of the things that we have at work, so I just wanted to point that out real quick. Okay, I want to go. No, it took a little while to get to I think who is next? Akut Al Yashaba, and then Akut Katie. Okay, okay, Akut Katie had asked if we could look at the lexicon. Okay, certainly, Akut, let's look at that. Now I'll say this to you too. The source that they use for the Greek lexicon, it's not a trusted source. So I don't put a whole lot of value into it. There are times when it's on point, and there are times when it's not on point. The best Greek source for a lexicon would be the what's called the LXX, or the Septuagint. The problem is that these, like, I know that this website does not use the Septuagint, and there are a lot of places, a lot of sites that does not use it, even though it is the most correct source when it comes to the Greek writings of our people, because the LXX was actually written by our people. So if the lexicon is based on the LXX, then it is based on the actual writings of our people. What the Romans have done, they have taken the scriptures, the Greek writings, and even the Abari text. For example, the book of Matthew, the book of Matthew was written in Habari. There's also evidence that the book of Katsun, Revelation, was written in Abari. But then when you look it up in the sources that they have today, they only show it to you in Greek, when in fact they weren't written in Greek. The book of Yahuah was written in Abari, but yet you only see it represented in Greek. So what they did was they took the text and they made a mess of it, even in their presentation of it in the Greek text. So if it's not based on the LXX, you still have problems in some cases. But we're going to look at the verse in the from the lexicon, in the Greek lexicon. So let's look at verse 24. Okay. Now, of course, we see the word here. The Greek word is allegoromina. Forgive me if I make a mess of it. It comes from allos, to speak. The root is to speak in an assembly. Okay. The word is 238. Let me look at that very quickly. It's interesting. If that's the word that's used, it simply means, okay, I speak allegorically. Now, the root means to speak in an assembly, allos. The actual word means to speak allegorically, allos, meaning other, another, different, other, another, of more than two, different. I guess just using something else to make your point, I guess, is what it's suggesting. So you have a Greek word that is synonymous with what we see in English, which is to speak allegorically. But again, like I say, the Greek text that we have, what they use as resource for the Greek text. It's not the text that they should use in many cases, and this site certainly does not use the LXX as they should. That's the source that all of these uh, that's the source that they should all use, but most do not use it, and so we have to approach even their Greek presentations and representations with caution. All right. Okay, let's see. I think right. Certainly a coot. It's not made up. And even if someone speak allegorically, that doesn't mean that it's made up. What he is saying is I'm using this example um allegorically. You see, or this incident uh can be used as an allegory or is an allegory to something else, pointing to something else, but yet it actually happened, you see. But the message is twofold. So we talk about prophecy in the scriptures being both foretelling, and forthtelling, right? Having two meanings, two applications, you see. So prophecy in scripture can be foretelling and forthtelling. Most are, and so they have an immediate application, and they can have an immediate meaning, and then they have future application, um, which basically lines up with what was shown originally. You see, but they have two distinct applications, and so this would be an example of that. You see. All right. So Hagar and Sharia can be seen as an allegory of the bond woman and the free woman. You see. So there's certainly nothing wrong with using it allegorically, and using the word allegory or allegorically does not mean that it's made up. So that's people again. I just got to say this real quick. That's another example. That's another example again of people who do not. You have people out there teaching and people saying stuff. Number one, they don't know the basics of language, how language work. They don't know the basics of studying, how one should study. They don't. Unfortunately, it would seem to me that many don't read very well, and so they end up misrepresenting a whole lot because they lack understanding, you see. Yes, don't understand the role of context and the importance of it. And so because of this, you have people saying all kinds of foolishness. You know, the greatest cause, I believe, to people saying all putting out all kinds of falsehood and all kinds of folly out there, the greatest culprit to it, I believe, is illiteracy. And I said this before, that, it's one thing to be illiterate, but yet have the greatest teacher there is, which is Yahuah Ruach. It's another thing to be illiterate and not have the Ruach. Then you're in bad shape, you see. But you don't need the wisdom of man. You don't need the knowledge of man in order to understand, because Yahuwah gives that to his people, you see. But the problem is you have a whole lot of people claiming that Yahuwah give them stuff when Yahuwah never gave them nothing. And on top of that, they can't read properly. And so they read something and they misrepresent what they read and then claim that Yahuwah gave it to them, you see. So they are functioning in illiteracy. The only spirit they're functioning in is a spirit of illiteracy, if anything. And now I'm not saying there is a spirit of illiteracy. It's just an allegory. So, all right. Anyway, let me move on. Okay, let's see. Akut, Al Yashaba, and then I believe it was Akut Katie next. It was Akut Katie next after Akut Al Yashaba, right? Hope I didn't take too long there, family. Oh, Akut Valerie did? Okay, so it might have been Akut. Okay, please remind me of the order, family. Akut Al Yashaba, Akut Katie, or Akut Valerie? Okay, Akut Katie is next, and then Akut Valerie. Okay, so Akut Al Yashaba, please go ahead, and then we'll go to Akut Katie.
Oh, Tutor for the mic, Aki, and thank you so much for that answer. I'm going to wait for a while and let Akut Katie and Akut Valerie go forth because I'm waiting for what has happened is that Akut Sharia and I were talking over the last few days about a situation, and I suggested to her that she should bring it up in the room. So I'm going to. Akut Katie didn't have a question, so I'm going to just give her a quick call. I would rather for her to present that question since it was her question, but we were just discussing it. So I'm going to call and see if she can come into the room. If not, then I'll come back and present the question myself. Okay, Aki? Chuda.
Okay, praise Yah. Yes, Akut, Valerie, you can go ahead, Akut, if you want me to unmute your mic. Oh, you're unmuted. Okay, so I'm gonna mute mine, and I'll wait. I'll wait to hear you.
Shalom, family. Um, all praises to Yahuah. I was reading in Yeram, Yahu or Jeremiah chapter 30, uh, verses 18 through 24 about the restoration of Yaakov. And verse 20 uh, mentions, says, their children also shall be as formerly. I can't say it right, but I cross-reference in Yashar'al or Isaiah 54 and verse 5, and says, for your husband is your maker, whose name is Yahuah of hosts. And then I cross-reference again in Husha chapter 2, verse 16, and it says, it will come about in that day, declares Yahuah, that you will call me, I can't say that. Yes, I can't say that, but and I will no longer. And you will no longer call me Bali, or I guess that's master. Well, what confused me a little bit is Christianity teaches us, and had taught um, that when everything's restored, that we'll be all brothers and sisters, and no one will marry, um, because we will the quote unquote church will become the bride of the father. So that kind of confuses me because verse 20 and Yaram Yahu says, their children also shall be as formerly. Formerly. I hope I'm not confusing anything here, but uh, I just was a little puzzled. I don't know if Christianity, because I remember you said don't throw everything out, because some things they say are correct, but they say that we'll all be like brothers and sisters. No one will marry or nothing like that. We'll just be Yahuwah, well, the bride. Um, Tada for your answer, Aki. Sorry, I kind of, but I know you can help me. Tada, Aki.
Praise Yah, Akut. That's a great question, and I understand totally. Praise Yah, and I want to thank you for bringing that question up because it's an important question. Now, so you mentioned a few verses and a few. So looking at Yaram Yahu chapter 30, and as you rightly point out, as you correctly point out, and forgive me, I'm going to take the long road here for a second, but as you correctly point out, that Yahuah chapter 30 is speaking about the regathering of Yashar'al, right? Now, back up to now Christianity certainly does not treat this text in context. All right, they don't treat it in context. They don't see it as speaking about the regathering of Yashar'al, because the truth of the matter is Christianity really believes, the overwhelming majority of Christians really believe, that Yashar'al no longer matters, but that the church have been chosen to replace Yashar'al. So there will be no regathering of Yashar'al. So scriptures like this, they absolutely and totally ignore. Now, only a few of them who now believe that the Jews are the chosen people, that's where you have Jews for Jesus and all this stuff. Only those who are the Jews for Jesus people, that nonsense, only they you will see that will take this scripture and say and apply it, saying that, yeah, this is talking about the regathering of the people, the Jews, and then that the Christian and the Jew is going to become one new man. They use the writings of Shaul, take the writings of Shaul and twist it, talking about the Jews and the church is becomes one new man in Jesus. Well, that might be the case in Jesus, but it certainly is not the case in Yahusha, because the one new man that Shaul speaks about is the two houses that were separated and that had become enemies of one another. That Shaul says when Yahuah returns to regather us, that the two houses will no longer be two houses, but the two houses will become one nation once again, because it has always been Yahuwah's intent for Yashar'al to be one nation. And so when Yahuwah comes and regather us, we will once again be one new man. There will be no house of Ephraim and no house of Yehuda, but we will be Yashar'al, you see, not two divided houses, you see, because a house divided among itself cannot stand. That's what Yahusha was talking about, the division of Yashar'al. And as long as we remain divided, we cannot stand. With that said, so the Christian don't treat this text in light of what it's really speaking about. They don't treat it from the perspective of the regathering of the people, the restoration of the people, the bringing back of the people to the land. They don't treat it from that perspective. They make a mess of it. So and it does not begin there. The prophecy of the restoration doesn't begin there. For example, when you go over to chapter 29, which is a chapter 29 and verse 11 that they like to quote. I know the plans I have for you, saith, in their words, quote unquote, saith the Lord. I know the plans I have for you, plans to whatever, this, that, and the other. Um, uh, and to give you an expected end. So they quote from chapter 29 about all the plans that Baal have for them, taking Yahuwah's word and making a mess of it, when in reality you can't separate chapter 29 from chapter 30, because all of it is talking about the regathering of Yashar'al. Now, with that said, let's get really to the question, right? So in verse 20, and his children shall be as before, and his congregation shall be established before me, and I shall punish all who oppress them. By the way, let me start a little bit up before I go in even any further with this. uh, I guess I'll start. I'll start at verse. I'll start at verse 12. Okay, I'll start at verse 12. Shalom to you, Akud Shar. It is wonderful to see you, Akud. So let me start at verse 12. For thus said Yahuwah, your breach is incurable, your wound is grievous. No one pleads your cause to bind up. There are no healing medicines for you. All those loving you have forgotten you. They do not seek you. For I smote you as an enemy smites with cruel chastisement, because your crookedness is great, your transgressions have increased. Now let's apply the rules of study as even as we read these verses. So in order to understand the message, there are a few things that we must get, right? We must know the who's in the text, right? We must know to whom, we must know the speaker, right? We must know the hearer, the receiver. We must know who they are, and there's some basic who, what, where, how, when, all of this we need to know. Now, Yaram Yahu, in order to answer these questions and to get understanding, there are a few questions we need to ask. Okay, so the messenger, we know that the messenger here is Yaram Yahu. If he is a messenger, it means then that he must have an audience. He was sent to an audience. A messenger is one who is sent. And if he is sent, is sender, and we know then that the sender is Yahuah, the sender sends him to an audience. Now, so we ask the question, who was Yaram Yahu's audience? Who was Yaram Yahu's audience? And this is where we're asking the who's, right? When you ask who, you can find there is quite a bit of who's, right, as we study. So who was Yaram Yahu's audience? The answer to that is Yaram Yahu he was sent to two audiences, but in particular one. Okay, he was sent to two audiences, but in particular, mainly one. Okay, so his main assignment was to the house of Ephraim, also known as the house of Yaakov, also known as the 10 tribes of Yashar'al. Okay, his main, yes, Yehuda and Yashar'al, right? Those are the two. But his main assignment was to the house of Yashar'al, also known as the house of Yaakov or the house of Ephraim. That was his main assignment. But at the same time, he was also sent to Yehuda. He was sent to warn Yehuda. He told Yehuda, so if we go back to chapter 1 and chapter 2, we see where Yahuah through his servant, he said to Yahu, and chapter 3, he said, he tell Yashar'al what was coming to them, and then he turned his attention to Yehuda, and he said that because you did not take heed to what happened to your brother, then this is what's going to happen to you also. And he proceeded to tell them about the curses, the chastisement, and the scattering that would come upon them. He tells them in chapter 3, he declares that the house of Ephraim or the house of Yashar'al, also known as the house of Yaakov, that Yahuah have divorced them. He has put them away. Now at the same time, he tell Yehuda that Yahuah says, I'm not going to divorce you, but I am going to scatter you. You see? So, okay, so who? He is speaking to Yehuda and Yashar'al. But his main message is to the house of Yashar'al. Okay, so that settles a few things right there. Okay, now, so he says, for thus says Yahuah, your breach is incurable, your wound is grievous. Okay, mainly to the house of Ephraim, but also this message applies to Yehuda also. All those loving you have forgotten you, they do not seek you. For I smote you as an enemy smites with cruel chastisement, because your crookedness is great, your transgressions have increased. Why do you cry about your breach? Your pain is incurable because of your many crookedness, because your transgressions have increased, I have done this to you. However, all those who devour you shall be devoured, and all your adversaries, every one of them, shall go into captivity. And those who exploit you shall be exploited, and all who prey upon you, I shall make a prey. Now it's interesting here because right here, even though Yahuah is telling Yashar'al about what will happen to them, the curses that will come upon them, he is also telling them that, listen, I am just, and those who chastise you will pay for their cruelty toward you. So that's something that the wicked need to understand and to keep in mind also. Because the wicked, in their pompous pride, while they do all the wicked things they do to us, and we got to be reminded also that Yahuwah is just, because oftentimes we might become discouraged and we say, man, how come Yahuwah love us so much, but yet we continue to suffer and the wicked get away with it and will forever get away with it? No, the wicked will not forever get away with it. The prophets of Yahuwah have always struggled with this. Habakkuk asked Yahuwah, he says, how long? He says, why do you use those more wicked than us to chastise us? You see, Yahuwah said, listen, I'm working a work. You see, but Yahuwah explains to us that those who do evil, because they get carried away with their evil, he says that I'm going to return it upon their heads and they're going to suffer greatly. Those who have done all the stuff that they have done to us, believe me, they will suffer and is suffering. You see, they have all kinds of sufferings they're going through, whether it be mental, emotional, they have all kinds of sufferings. You think the curses are only upon us? No, the curses aren't only upon us. Some of our oppressors, because they're so prideful, and because they're able to build great walls, they suffer secretly behind their walls. What you see oftentimes is a facade, and that's just the beginning. The worst is yet to come, you see, but they suffer greatly even now, you see. Now, yes, and it certainly would seem that way. So he says, however, all those who devour you shall be devoured, and all your adversaries, every one of them, shall go into captivity, and those who exploit you shall be exploited. Now we can ask the scriptures. We can ask history if this has been true in every instance concerning the people who have taken Yashar'al captive. So, okay, so we might have a problem believing that this is really going to happen. Well, Yahuwah says, if you want to know the future, look to the past, right? And so we can ask history if this really, if there's any example of this happening. We certainly can ask history, okay? So we ask history. How about Nebuchadnezzar? Nebuchadnezzar was a king who came into Yashar'al and took Yashar'al captive, right? And certainly was not nice to Yashar'al. What was the end of Nebuchadnezzar? Was not he taken captive by another kingdom? And that kingdom set Yashar'al free? Yep, he lost his mind and he was taken captive. He lost his kingdom. He became what he turned our people into. He became a slave too, you see. And every king that have taken Yashar'al captive throughout our history, we see that happen to. So will it happen again to those who have had us captive? Yes, it sure will happen, because it has always happened. And Yahuwah said it will happen. And he has shown us that it happens. So it will happen again, you see. And gradually is happening. Now, verse 17, for I restore health to you and heal you of your wounds, declares Yahuwah, for they have called you an outcast, saying, this is Zion, no one is seeking her. They make mockery of us. Thus says Yahuwah, see, I turn back the captivity of Yaakov's tent. Speaking here about Yaakov, the 10 tribes, the scattered ones, the divorced ones, and have compassion on his dwelling places. And the city shall be built up on in its own mound, and the palace stand on its right place. Yeah, that's interesting there too. The city shall be built upon its own mound, and the palace stand on its right place. You think that it's by coincidence that Yahuwah puts this in his word when he said that the palace will stand on its right place? That's important. Let me let me stop the recording and start again. That's very important. I'll come right back to that. Give me 1 second.